Welcome everyone to our workshop, Returning to Spirit, Roots of Reconciliation. I invite you to put whatever memento or symbol that you brought with you on our altar that's in front of us here, please. And if you haven't had a chance to collect one of the stones or pick one of the stones from the basket, if you could do that now, please. And I invite you just to pay attention to the altar that's in the center of the room here, the center of the circle. Returning to Spirit has a long history. You are going to be part of a process that's taken over 20 years now, trying to build partnerships, build reconciliation, bring healing to our country, to our families, to our communities. And so this work we understand as being given to us from the Creator who wants to build bridges, who wants to build unity, who wants to bring harmony to all the places that we are unreconciled. And so I invite you to consider this as a sacred space, however you define that. When we're in the circle, we ask you not to step over the altar, but to go around it, please. And that's one of the reasons why we don't bring food or drink into the circle itself. One, it can be a distraction if things spill, but it's also to try and keep this place sacred for us and for the conversations that we're going to have. So to begin with, we usually have a ceremony, an opening celebration, opening prayer, and it varies depending on the group. But one of the things I'd ask you to do first is please stand and maybe form a circle. And just in the palm of your hand, hold that stone that you're carrying. And whatever prayer or intention that you have for this work and for this week, I invite you just to be mindful of putting that in the stone. Let it hold for you your desire for this week, your prayer for this week. And I invite you to put that stone on the altar. And how would the group like to begin in terms of a prayer or an intention? There's somebody that would like to offer a prayer. Thank you. Okay, you may be seated. Thank you. So we're going to have introductions, and the way they're going to start is there are 3 questions on the flip chart. The first is your name, the second is where you're from, and the third question is, what is your intention in being here? What is your intention in being here? I'll start on my right, and it will just go around. Thank you. Now, the other part of our opening ceremonies each morning is that we offer each other greetings. And some of us are huggers, some of us are not. And so we want you to be respectful to each other. If you don't want to have a hug, just put your hand out or put your fist out for a fist bump. But we want you to greet each other, to see each other's face, to see each other's eyes. And then once you've greeted everyone, then you can please sit down. Greeting, all the way around. Thank you very much. So the purpose of this workshop, what is the purpose? The purpose is to reconcile, but to reconcile you with others, and you with life. Now, how many of you here, how many of us know what it feels like when we're unreconciled with ourselves? When there's something in us that is not feeling right, it's not in alignment, there's something that's not right with us inside. How many have had that experience? For me, being up here right now, after not delivering a workshop for several months, it's like, oh, Lord, Susan, I hope you know what you're doing here. And so there's a little anxiety in me right now. And so I just have to be okay with that. Just be okay with that. And so when you're not reconciled with yourself, what starts to happen? What starts to happen? Yeah, you might get something in the pit of your stomach. You might want to try to avoid people because you're too busy dealing with the things that are going on with you. There's lots of things that happen when we're not reconciled with ourselves. We carry a lot of guilt sometimes, a lot of shame. And so just to be aware of that, just to be mindful of that. So another part of our reconciliation is to be reconciled with others. Now, how many here have had difficulties with other people where you say, there's something between us? There's something between us. Now, I know some of you folks, you work together. And maybe you weren't quite too sure when you started getting in on this workshop. I thought, oh dear, there he is, there she is. Because there's something that's not quite right with you. And how does that affect the way you are in a group, how you are with yourself? So we're sometimes not reconciled with each other. And then sometimes we're not reconciled with life itself. I don't know, there might be something going on in your life right now, and it's just a little too much to bear. Or it's just taking away space for something else. Anybody had that experience? You know, you've got somebody in the hospital, you've got somebody that is on your case, whatever it is. And so to reconcile you with others, and you with life, that's what this workshop is about. You know, people coming in, especially in the non-Indigenous rooms, they want to get right to reconciling with the Indigenous population, the Indigenous people. That's what they're here for. But how well can you reconcile with another in that kind of context if you're not reconciled with yourself? If you're not reconciled with the people around you, if you're not reconciled with life itself. And so we're going to spend some time looking at that. That's what this workshop is about. And so there are certain promises that we make. We're going to promise you that you're going to learn where you give up your power. Where you give up your power. And I don't mean power in the sense of a strong man, you know, like lift weights. Has nothing to do with it. It has to do with being fully expressive of who you are. Because we shut ourselves down. You know, we shut ourselves down so easily. Somebody comes in the room, all of a sudden, we put on a mask. You know, something happens to us, all of a sudden, we're not present. So we give up our power. We're also going to promise to show you how to have personal power show up in your life. Show up in your life. Now, how are we going to do all of this? Well, the first thing we talk about is, you know, what this program is and what it isn't. What it isn't, what it is. It is not therapy. It is not religion. It is not rehashing the past. It is not litigation. It's not any of those things. You know, some of you wrote on your application form that you want to learn more about residential schools. You want to learn more about what happened. And we've heard more, you know, over the course of these few years, especially since Kamloops and the 215 unmarked graves that were discovered. And so we're more open to recognizing what our history was. But this isn't a history class. You know, it's within the context of what the legacy of the Indian Residential School was about, but it's not what we're primarily looking at. Again, we're looking at you, how you are reconciled or not reconciled with yourself, others, and life. So what it is being open to seeing where you are unreconciled. You know, what the work is that you need to be about in order to bring healing and wholeness to your own life, to be able to fully express who you are. You know, and some people have said, you know, what they get is very beneficial. It's therapeutic. It is therapeutic, even though it's not therapy. We're not therapists. But just having conversations about things that are meaningful for you, that brings a level of healing. That brings a level of wholeness, especially when you feel that you're able to really express something of who you are. So what it isn't and what it is. And so we're going to do that using a few different methods, a few different ways. So how many of you go to workshops? Yeah, many of you go to workshops. Now, how satisfying is it when you're going to a workshop about something that you care about, that you're interested in? You're expected to sit there, take notes dutifully while somebody yaks at you for 2 days. You go home. Now, how satisfying is that? Sometimes if the speaker is really dynamic, you get some good insights, that's fine. But what happens oftentimes with those kinds of workshops is we file it in our bookcase, or we file it in our filing drawer, or we file it in that big round filing basket that's at the bottom of the desk. That's not what this workshop's going to be. We are going to have conversations. We are going to be able to look at different ideas, different concepts, and have conversations about them. Because one of the things that we try and do is have a language. We show how we use language in a certain way. And that's not only to help us understand what each one of us is saying when we use certain words, but because we use the same definitions, the same concepts throughout our workshops, whenever you come and gather with groups that have not been on this workshop, you're going to speak the same language. And so they have certain concepts that we use. But the most important part of this workshop is the fact that it's experiential. It's an experiential workshop. Now, what does that say to you? An experiential workshop. Okay? It's going to touch into experiences that we put you through here. So there's going to be small group discussions, there's going to be large group discussions, there's going to be time for you to think personally about certain things, have personal insights into certain things. But we're also going to ask you to really dig into your experience. Dig into your experience, because that is where the learning is going to come from. Not just going through a particular exercise, but if we're talking about reconciliation, if we're talking about something that's going to matter to you, then it has to touch your own life. So you're going to share things. It's up to you what you share. We're not going to force anybody to share anything, but we are going to invite you to share your experience, to share maybe some things that have happened to you, in order to be able to unpack that a little bit, unfold it, and see what we discover about what shuts you down, from being able to express yourself. Because if we're going again into a room with the Indigenous community trying to reconcile, and there's something in us that we don't want to look at, that for sure is going to affect how we're going to be encountered by the other person. You get that? Okay, very good. So it's an experiential workshop. One of our trainers made a distinction. She said, it's not just personal things that you are going to share, but some things that may be private, that you haven't shared much with other people. And again, in terms of safety, you share what you want. But the more you engage in this in your experience, the more you're going to get out of it. The more you're going to get out of it. And so some of the things that we will encourage you to do is homework. Take some of the learning, some of the concepts that you have learned over the day and put them out there, and just to be able to practice those. So it's very much an experiential workshop. Any questions so far? Okay, all right. All right, so some of the things that we're going to require of you. Let me get my hand out. Okay. One of the models that's an important part of the workshop that you see posted here is 2 circles. One that is lying underneath the other. So what do you see in that circle? Shadow, yeah. An eclipse, yeah. What might it represent when we're looking at the spirit of who we are, looking at the essence of ourselves and what happens sometimes when we get shut down? Yeah, all the things that are in the shadow, those are the things that shut us down. Now, when you look at a child, when you look at someone, I've got a niece, and I remember when she was about 2 years old, and she had such life in her, such life. She was expressive, she was fun, she was fearless. But then over time, things happen that shut that down. And so what are the things that happen to us that shut us down? Yeah, we get blamed, maybe abuse in the family, maybe whatever it is. And so we start to cover over the spirit of who we are. We start to cover over our potential, and at the same time, we sometimes create a persona, create a way of being that we think other people will find acceptable. Because there's some parts of us that we've been told, that's not acceptable. Not acceptable. And so we start to cover over the spirit of who we are. And so this workshop is all about uncovering that and being able to see what it is that we've placed in front of the spirit of who we are. And remember when I talked about the fact that, it happens when we are little, when it happens when we're small. When something's happened to us in the past and we don't resolve it, where does it show up? Okay, in the present. And if we don't resolve it in the present, where is it going to show up? In the future. Can somebody come up with an example for that? That happened in their own life? You're shy. Well, I'll tell you one. I started to work at a retreat center. And one of the groups that we worked with were people in recovery. Normally Alcoholics Anonymous, but it could be NACA, whatever it is. So the first night, I've got 40 men in a room. And I don't know them from Adam. They don't know me. It's the first time I met them. I'm staying in a guest house at the retreat center. I'm just deciding whether I'm going to take the job, but this is an opportunity I have to meet some of the people. I walked into the place I was staying, and I closed the door, I locked the door, walked up the stairs, locked the door, walked into my bedroom, locked the door, took my cell phone and slipped it under my pillow. And I tried to calculate, if somebody was going to break in, how long would I have before I could phone someone? And all of a sudden, I stopped and I realized what I had done, because all of this was unconscious. And I said to myself, Susan, you can't live like this. I had no idea I was still carrying that much fear from the fact that I was raised in an alcoholic home. And so my father sometimes would come home drunk, and we would fear him. So that happened when I was a child, growing up. This event happened 25 years after my father died. Had no idea it was still sitting there. But it showed up because it was unresolved. And over the course of the years since I've worked at the Mount, I've resolved some of those things so they don't show up in the future. But I recognize I get triggered. I get triggered by things from my past, and they show up in the present. Anybody else had that experience? Something from the past shows up. Yep. Yep, very good. Thank you. Thank you. And so things from our past show up in the present, and if they don't get healed, they show up in the future. So when was the last Indian residential school closed? Yeah, 1996. Is it in the past? Or is it still present to us? Schools are closed, but is the legacy still there? Yes. And if we don't resolve it, where is it going to show up? In the future. Very good. Very good. And so this is what this workshop is about, is to look at what's in front of the spirit of who we are, to be able to really, with gentleness, but also courage, to look at the things in our own life that we're dealing with, that we're facing. Very good. So we're going to ask for some requirements from you in order to be able to run this workshop well. The first requirement is participation. Participation. This is my flip chart. And what's the distinction for you between somebody that's a participator and somebody that's just an observer? Yeah, yeah. You know, you can participate, yes, by observing, for sure. You know, sometimes I like to watch just to make sure I've got the instructions right. Sometimes I like to observe just to make sure it's safe. There's different ways that we observe. But there's a difference, you know, here we're looking at not just somebody who's observing in order to learn, in order to step in, but somebody who's observing like a spectator. They're up in the bleachers. They have no intention of coming down to play, right? So participator is somebody who steps into the game. Somebody who we say jumps into the soup. Someone that is going to take part fully in all of this. So if you're coming here just to observe, might not be the workshop for you. So we're going to invite you to participate. And again, in safety, as you can, as you will, but the intention is there. And the work is all based in responsibility. Our responsibility poster here, you know, everything in your life that has happened to you is your responsibility. And I don't mean to say that things didn't happen to you, that other people didn't do things to you, perhaps. That wasn't your fault. But at the end of the day, who is holding that? Who is left to deal with that? You are. You are. And so it's your responsibility. Responsibility, you know, I'm the oldest sister. And responsibility sometimes feels like a burden, like, oh, I got to look after my little one. I got to look after my mother. I got to look after. That's not responsibility. Responsibility is being able to being able to respond as your. Let's try that again. Responsibility comes without blame, without making wrong, but it engages. It engages with what needs to be done or accomplished or not done. It takes responsibility. And so one of the things that is going to be required of you, if you take responsibility or as you take responsibility, is to choose. Choose to be here. You know, some of you might have been sent by your staff, by your office, by your diocese, but really it's your choice whether you're going to be here or not. And so choose to take part fully. Choose to take part. And that's going to require some open-mindedness. Open-mindedness. Does anybody here speak Swahili? But you know you don't speak Swahili, correct? So we want to make a distinction between what you know and what you don't know you don't know. We know certain things. Some of you have a lot of education. Some of you have a lot of background in psychology or sociology or religion. What we're asking you to do is to be open to learning. Open to learning. Open your perspective. You know, we think that we know a lot of things, but really that's like this. So what am I present to? What I know. What we're inviting you to is to be present to something that new that could unfold for you. Something new. To be open to what you don't know you don't know. Get that? And so that's going to take intention and willingness. Intention and willingness. You're the one that's going to decide whether or not this is going to have a profound impact on your life. Because you have the intention and the willingness to give of yourself 100%. I will give of myself 100% for this because I've seen the difference it makes in people's lives. I see the difference it's made in my own life, this work. So intention and willingness. So thinking of everything that we have talked about, what you've shared, what could be the opportunity for you? What could be the opportunity? I just want you to write that down in your books. Find a clean page. Write the opportunity down. All right, now we'll go in a circle and we will, if you could just share what the opportunity is for you. Thank you. Now we've got several agreements that we are going to invite you as well to accept. First one is to be on time. You notice on our altar we've got the 7 sacred teachings that come from a variety of different communities, but these are the standard or the more common ones in many of the Indigenous communities as well as outside. And so respect is one of the 7 sacred teachings. So we want you to be respectful. And so being on time is part of that. We ask that there be no alcohol or drugs, recreational, for the 4 days that you are part of this workshop. If you are on certain medication, that's fine. But other than that, recreational drugs or alcohol, no. Be here for the entire workshop. We are building one piece on the other on the other. And if you miss a piece, then there's something that is going to be lacking in the way you're able to participate. So please be here for the entire workshop. No complaining. No complaining. When you realize how much we complain, how much energy does that take? How much does it take us away from what it is we need to be attentive to? Right? So deal with things as they show up. No complaining. Be responsible for yourself. And by that, we also mean that don't take somebody else's responsibility on yourself. From particular groups, we're helpers. We like to work with people and help people, but sometimes they just need to do their own work. And so we allow people to do their own work. We'll be able to monitor how that plays out over the 4 days. And do your homework. There's going to be things that we invite you to do, to take part in, again, because it's experiential. You're going to learn from your own experience. And so we'll have agreements to be able to do the homework. And be respectful for your cell phone use. I know sometimes you're waiting for calls. No, don't have them on in the circle, please, but at the breaks and at lunchtime, you can check messages and do what you need. And again, no food or drink in the circle. And can we get agreement on the agreement? Okay. Is there anything else that you would need to have as part of our agreement? Confidentiality. Now that's something that comes up often. It's not something we can guarantee because it is up to the group. It is up to the group. We understand this work to be confidential, that what is in the room is said in the room stays in the room, because that's the only way that people are going to feel that they can safely share what needs to be shared for them. Because if this work is going to make a difference in your life, then you have to be able to feel that you can share things in confidence. Does everybody agree to that? Very good. Okay, we'll take a break. Thank you very much.